Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us today for our webinar on planning a Victorian Law Week activity. My name is Kate and I'm the Education and Events Director at the Victorian Law Foundation. The Victorian Law Foundation acknowledges the traditional custodians of country, wherever you may be joining us. The offices of the Victorian Law Foundation sit on Wurundjeri land. We pay respects to their elders and to all the generations of Wurundjeri and other First Nations people, and acknowledge that the lands were never ceded. We recognise the impact of colonisation, its legacy of injustice, and the marginalisation of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. And we believe that acknowledging the past is an essential step in building a better, more equitable future. Victoria Law Foundation aims to break down the barriers to justice for all Victorians through our work. We are genuinely committed to making a contribution to a better justice system for all of us, especially those vulnerable and in most need. Before I begin, I would just like to do a little bit of housekeeping. If we could ask that all cameras and microphones remain off for all attendees throughout this webinar, we would be grateful. We are recording this webinar and it will be transcribed and captioned before we send the link to you all. You will receive a link to the recording at the conclusion of this webinar. I would also like to introduce the Victorian Law Foundation Victorian Law Week team. With us today, we have Helen Papadimitriou, our events coordinator, Matt Hurst, our communications manager, Jackie Matthews, our communications coordinator, and rounding off our team, but not on screen today, is Chelsea Brunkhurst and Catherine Starry from our communications team. We have a packed program for you today. We also have our staff available to answer any questions via the chat function. Please also get in touch with us afterwards if you'd like to ask us anything. We'll have our contact details on the final slide. So today we'll be covering a bit of an overview about Victorian Law Week, what it is, how it works, what support's available to event organisers, and some key dates. We'll give you some information about the grants that are available for event organisers. We'll also talk you through some things you should keep in mind when planning your Victorian Law Week activity. Starting with our updated event criteria, we'll also provide an update for people interested in offering free legal consultations. We'll look at why it's important to have a clear purpose for your event activity and how to identify or articulate that purpose. We'll also look at why it's important to have a clearly defined target audience and how to take your target audience into account when planning your event. And finally, we'll cover some of the things to think about when deciding whether to run an online or an in-person event. So, what is Victorian Law Week? Victorian Law Week is a program of community events and activities that is designed to improve the public's understanding of the law and the legal system. At its heart, it's a program for everyday Victorians. It's there to help them understand their rights, find answers to their questions, and to find out what help is available. Law Week is a national initiative, but it's run separately in each state. In Victoria, it is managed by the Victorian Law Foundation. We manage the program, but we don't run the events ourselves. Events are run by a whole range of organisations: community legal centres, government bodies, community organisations, libraries, neighbourhood houses, law firms, the courts, and a whole lot more. We call those organisations our event organisers. So you might hear us using that term from time to time. We are pleased to have many of our participating event planners joining us for this information session today. We'll be talking about events during the webinar, but I wanted to flag that's a very loose term. The activities that we include in the Law Week program go beyond traditional events. In previous years, they have included information sessions, webinars, and panel discussions, but also free legal consultations, info stands at libraries where people can drop past and ask questions and pick up legal resources, informal question and answer sessions on legal topics, interactive quizzes and workshops, online and in person. These are always popular. Mock trials, film screenings followed by panel discussions, exhibitions that have an educative element. And of course, we're always open to new ideas for interesting and engaging events. I'm now going to pass over to Helen, who will let you know about a few key dates and explain the support that's available to our event partners.
Thank you, Kate. Hi, everyone. I'm Helen. I'm the events coordinator here at the Foundation. So just first up, we'll give you a sense of some key dates to give you kind of the road to Law Week in May. Law Week itself happens 16th to the 22nd of May. The one coming up, the date coming up quickly now is our grant application close date, which is 28th of February, which is Monday. And I'll tell you a little bit more about the grants in a few minutes. Applicants who are successful will be notified 11th of March. Then we have event registrations, which close on the 18th of March. An event registration is what you need to do after you've thought through your idea, got everything organised, and you're ready to submit it to us. You need to do that online, and we call that the event registration. So that's what that date is. And we're hoping to have the program released by the 8th of April. Now, just moving on to some of the support that we offer and our thinking around all of that. So event organisers are responsible for all aspects of running their own events. Now, we recognise that some of you here today are subject matter experts and know your material and your audiences really well and best, probably. Others will have legal expertise, but may not have a clear idea of a target audience or even a clear idea just yet. It may just be forming. And then there's another group that may have regular audiences or visitors like a neighbourhood house or a library, but now need to find the right topic and the legal expertise to bring that information to their community. So no matter which one of those groups you find yourself in, we're here to provide you with support. We are really happy to talk through an event idea, help you develop it, and also just talk through what would work best for your target audiences, what format it would take, all of those things. We're also very happy to facilitate introductions to organisations that you may want to collaborate with who could bring some legal expertise to your activity. We've got a broad network in the legal assistance sector, and we're happy to connect you with some of those people. So I'll hand over to Matt now, who will give you some more information on the kind of marketing support that we provide.
Thank you very much, Helen. So hi, I'm Matt Hurst. I'm the Communications Manager at Victorian Law Foundation. You would have heard earlier that Jackie Matthews is our Communications Coordinator. Jackie and I are part of a small comms team for Victorian Law Week. Our role is to promote Victorian Law Week as a whole. So what I'd like to stress is you're also responsible for marketing your own event, especially as you know your audience the best. But we're also here to support you and supplement your promotion in a number of ways, which we'll run through now. So all events for Law Week are listed on our online program on the website. So we also look at doing things like grouping events around themes or target audiences, and look to create dedicated promotional mini campaigns. For example, if we see lots of wills events, we can group them together, or events for older Australians or events in specific regions, we can create particular landing pages and put additional support behind that promotion. We're also working with a PR company to seek free media coverage for Victorian Law Week. So our focus is really on raising awareness of the everyday legal problems that people in the community face. and promoting Victorian Law Week as a way to find answers. So we may be in contact with you to be part of that campaign if we see that the topics and events align. And in some circumstances, we may also promote specific events. And in those situations, we will be in contact, or our PR company will be in contact to work with you to prepare for what a media outlet may need. We're also arranging a larger media buy for Victorian Law Week, and we're working on the specifics, but we're building off what we delivered last year, and it focuses on digital promotion, which includes digital programmatic ad spend, which you may see when you visit newspaper websites, and also exploring some other options like newspaper advertising, out-of-home advertising, and much more. So the topics that are covered in Victorian Law Week are so broad. So what we're looking to do is follow a content marketing and public information campaign approach to draw people in through those relevant and popular topics and themes. For example, key topic areas like housing issues and employment issues, trying to really connect people with the problems of everyday life and the fact that Victorian Law Week is there to help answer those issues. I'll now pass over to Jackie Matthews, our Communications Coordinator, for some more information on promotion.
Thanks, Matt. So I'm Jackie, the Communications Coordinator at VLF. So we recognise that every event is going to be unique and will attract its own specific audience, which is why we create individual social media ads for every event in the program. So we promote each event on our Twitter page, and we also run paid ads on Facebook. And for these ads, we use the event image provided by you to make these ads eye-catching. So try to find something engaging when you're submitting your event. We also use your specified target audience to target these ads, to ensure that the post is getting in front of those that your event is relevant to. So this is why it's really important to provide as much detail as you can about your target audience. You can see in the middle of the screen a bit of an example of how we can target things like location, age, interests, gender, even languages spoken. We can get really specific. So make sure you include that information. To support your own digital marketing, we provide logo files for the Victorian Law Week logo, as well as a style guide to inform its use. And we can also provide standard social media share graphics and template resources for you to use in your promotion. So if you have any particular resource that you think would help you in your promotion, then let us know about it. We'll see what we can do if we can help put something like that together.
Excellent. Thanks, Jackie. Just to sum up, we are a very small communications team here. There is a limit to how much we can help each individual event, but we will try our best. And we're also here to provide some guidance around promotion. So if you have any questions about ideas of how you'd like to get that message across, we're keen to hear from you. We'll also be sharing information with you through our emails and through the website over the coming months to help you prepare for Victorian Law Week and to get the word out and run a successful event. I'll now hand over to Helen for the next part of the presentation.
Thanks. And the next part of the presentation is a little bit about grants. So a little bit differently this year, we're only offering grants to neighbourhood houses. So there's $1,000 available to deliver a Victorian Law Week activity. And you can see on the screen that that money can go to staff coordination, translators, childcare, catering, all of those things. The grant applications close 28th February on Monday. And there are a few criteria that you need to be aware of, is that the neighbourhood house must be a member of Neighbourhood Houses Victoria, and priorities will be given to activities in regional Victoria. And probably the key one is that neighbourhood houses must have a partnership with a legal expert secured before submitting an application. So if you are not a neighbourhood house but are still interested in one of these grants, you may want to consider reaching out to your local neighbourhood house. And if you are thinking about that and need an introduction, please let us know and we can put you in touch with the association and help you get that going. So moving on now to some other things critical to how you think about developing your activity. The main one is keeping in mind our event criteria, which is 4 main things. The first one is that the activity must take place in Victoria. It needs to improve the Victorian community's understanding of the law or the legal system. It's to be designed for individuals or small businesses, and it must be free of charge. So events need to be open to the public, which may also is a pretty important thing, which basically means they can't be an invitation-only event. So trying to give you an example of that, it's about who your target audience is. So if you've got a really specific target audience, someone like, say, children of kindergarten-aged kids who are on kindergarten boards and committees, that's a very specific and targeted group, and your event would be essentially closed if that's all the people you were speaking to. So we need it to be open to the public and that anyone can come along. However, if you are interested in an invitation-only event, please do contact us, because we want to provide you with as much support as possible to make it happen, because those events are useful as well. So the next thing I want to focus on is legal consultations. If you're interested in offering free legal consultations, that's fantastic, and we would love to include them in the program. There's just a couple of things to be aware of that we've picked up on from experience, having run some of these before. So when you're working out the length of time for the appointments you're going to offer, please make sure that you've allowed enough time to obtain instructions from the person in front of you, and also provide meaningful preliminary information or advice during the appointment. So in order to do that, you might want to set some parameters around what can be covered during the appointment, just to make it a bit more manageable. So I'll give you an example. Last year we had a law firm that offered free legal consultations. They practiced in wills and estates, but rather than offering to provide kind of general advice on wills and estate planning matters, they offered to simply review an existing will or a power of attorney that the client brought in and provide advice on what needed updating or what needed changing. So very targeted, very specific, making the most of the time available. So it is worthwhile considering whether you want to be a bit prescriptive about what you can provide during those kinds of appointments. So that's it from me this time round. I'll hand back to Kate now to take you through some other really good stuff.
Thank you, Helen. I'm now going to talk about purpose. If you want to run a really effective Victorian Law Week event, it's important to consider the purpose and target audience of your event from the outset. Those two elements are intrinsically linked and need to be factored into all aspects of your event planning and delivery. When you're thinking about the purpose of your event, what you're really asking is, why are you running the event? That sounds like a very simple question, but it can sometimes require a bit of thought to answer it properly. We recognise that we have a broad range of event planners with different objectives for their Victorian Law Week event. You might be using Victorian Law Week to support your local community by raising awareness of services, rights and support that is available. We recognise that you may be seeking expertise from subject matter experts at private law firms, government agencies or educational institutions. We also recognise that you might be using Victoria Law Week as a vehicle for achieving your organisation's own goals. But when you're identifying the purpose of your event, we really encourage you to think beyond any business development goals or internal community engagement KPIs you might have, and ask, what do you want attendees to get out of your event? If you do run an effective event, that can of course lead to new clients or referral sources, But we really encourage you to think beyond business development as your primary purpose. What if you want to get involved in Victoria Law Week, but you just don't know where to start? What would be useful for you to cover? A great place to start is your organisation's own data. It can provide a whole lot of very valuable information. For instance, one thing your data might show is that there are recurring issues among certain stakeholder groups. An example is PEXA. In the lead up to a previous Law Week, PEXA, which is the Property Exchange Australia, identified an issue with cyber fraud in property transactions. Emails containing bank details for property settlements were being intercepted and hackers were stealing the proceeds of sale. They had put a whole lot of protections in place and were in contact with practitioners about the new systems they should be using, but they recognised that that might not be enough to stop the problem and that consumers, the buyers and sellers themselves, needed to be made aware of the issue and what they could do to protect themselves. So the primary purpose of their event was to raise consumers' awareness about fraud and how to protect themselves. That subject matter formed part of a much broader event on tips for buying and selling property, as they recognised that that would be the best way to introduce that content to their target audience. Another way you might work out how to focus your event is to look at the demographics of your local community and the issues that different groups in the community face. Another example we have of this is the Northern Community Legal Centre. The photo on your screen now is a photo of an event that was run by Northern Community Legal Centre prior to COVID. They recognise that there are a lot of recently arrived migrants in their community who might not understand their legal rights and the services available to them. And they wanted to run an event to address that. So they held an activity at a local English language school. They conducted legal health checks, which are basically surveys that ask about a range of issues that a person might face in their life. And they did that so that they could identify if any of the attendees had any other legal problems, so that then they could let them know about their rights and the services that were there to help them. Another thing to think about is that people are often likely to have particular legal needs during particular life stages. You might want to look up the makeup of your local community or a particular community and consider their legal needs or legal problems that these people are likely to have. For example, Tullamarine powers of attorney, again, before COVID. You'll see another photo on the screen. This is a photo of an event run a couple of years ago by the Tullamarine Community House in conjunction with a local lawyer. There was a seniors group that met regularly at the community house. The organisers recognised that was a group that needed to know about future planning, but they might not be particularly comfortable with legal matters, so might be unlikely to go and see a lawyer off their own bat. The purpose of their event was to educate the seniors about powers of attorney. They ran a really informal, accessible event for local seniors. It was essentially a question and answer session about powers of attorney. It was held in a location that was familiar to the audience, not intimidating, and there was a morning tea provided. Catering is always a fantastic draw card. This is a fantastic model for neighbourhood houses and other centres that are looking to support their communities. Your event might be designed to address an existing legal need or issue, or teach your target audience about a new development. It might be that broader social issues or current events give rise to particular legal needs and you can tie it into. A webinar example is this. Last year in the lead up to Law Week, there were a whole raft of new legal issues emerging due to COVID. People were dealing with employment issues in large numbers, grappling with new laws about tenancy, emergency powers, and much, much more. We had a number of organisations run webinars on these topics to let people know about the new laws that affected them, what their rights and responsibilities were, and also where they could go to get help. So it might be worthwhile thinking about whether there are emerging legal needs in the context of broader events that you could tie into. If you work for a complaints body or other legal institution, your purpose might be to raise awareness of what you do. We'll talk a bit more about how you can do that a bit later on, when in the context of our discussion about target audience. So to tie into that, we'll talk about target audience now. The audience of Victorian Law Week as a whole is extremely broad. It's the Victorian community. Under that broad umbrella audience, we encourage event organisers to set specific target audiences for their own events. And the reason for that is that your event will be more effective and will have greater impact if you have a specific target audience and you factor them into every element of your event planning. Today, we have many attendees from libraries and neighbourhood houses. We would ask you to consider your regular visitors to your centre. Is there a topic or a type of event that meets their needs right now? If your event is covering a specific area of the law, you'll have the most impact and better engagement if you are dealing with it, delivering that information directly to a group that needs to know it, or at the very least is interested in it. If you're trying to raise awareness about your organisation and the work that it does, it helps to think about who needs to know about your organisation and why they would want to come along to your event. It can be really difficult to attract an audience to a general awareness raising event, and having a target audience means that you can design and market your event in such a way that you draw in a particular group. And that's not to say that you won't also get others interested in attending also. For example, the Coroner's Court and Victorian Institute of Forensic Medicine wanted to run an online event to raise awareness about the work of their organisations. But rather than a simple panel discussion, they ran a mock inquest into Prince's death. That allowed them to position their target audience as Prince fans. That was a subtle way to target their event to a particular age demographic and gave them the opportunity to engage in targeted marketing that appealed to that audience, deliver the event using language and content that would appeal to their audience while still getting their message across. That was a really successful strategy. The event attracted a large audience and it was fully booked. So, we asked the question, why not the general public? If you have a target audience and factor them into every element of your event, what it means is that you will be delivering the right information to the right people in the right way. The information you're sharing might be relevant to a whole range of people, but if you want to communicate it effectively, you need to do that in a way that is appropriate and relevant and useful for your audience. Excuse me. And you can't speak to everyone effectively in the same way. You certainly wouldn't be able to speak effectively to these two if you spoke to them in the same way. And at the end of the day, if you try to speak to everyone, you'll end up speaking to almost no one. I'll give you an example. Say you're a wills and estates lawyer. You want to run a webinar about future planning for anyone who doesn't have a will. There are a whole lot of people who will fall into that category. For example, that content may be of particular interest and relevance to both retirees and to parents of young kids who are just starting to consider future planning. But there are going to be big differences in the information each of these groups needs to know or is interested in, also in the language you need to use to get that info across effectively, the best event format for each group. Online event might be better for young parents. Retirees might not necessarily be as computer literate. How you effectively market the event to each of them will also be different. And even the most convenient location and time of day to run your event will be totally different. Older people might prefer an event during the day, But for young parents, a time after the kids have gone to bed is definitely likely to suit them better. So how do you work out your target audience? What are some things that you might take into consideration when you're working out who your target audience should be? To start with, you might ask yourself, who needs to know the information you are sharing? Who will be interested in attending your event? They are the two key questions. Beyond that, think about whether to narrow down your audience by location, age, occupation, whether they're at a particular life stage. For example, are they university students, young parents, empty nesters, retirees? You might run an event that is designed to raise awareness amongst tertiary students about how to challenge unjust public transport fines. Or you might look at a combination of those factors. For example, you might run an event to encourage older people in the Vermont area to undertake future planning. If you are uncovering a specific area of law, you might also want to think about whether it would be more effective to target your event directly to the people who have the particular legal issue you're covering, or if they're joined up with other services, would it be more effective to target your event to the service providers, such as healthcare workers, social workers, and other community workers? For example, you might decide to run an event on how to identify elder abuse and what to do about it that is designed for managers and staff at private aged care homes in a particular region, rather than for the residents themselves. Once you've decided on your target audience, we recommend that you take them into account in all aspects of your event planning. But what exactly should be tailored to your target audience? The first and most obvious thing is the content you will cover. Your event should cover the information that your audience needs to know or will be interested in. It's also a good idea to use language that your target audience understands, so that the information you communicate is really easy for them to comprehend. It's worthwhile thinking carefully about the language you use in a few different contexts. The wording of your event title, your event description on the Victorian Law Week website, and any other marketing materials, how you draft any resources you give out at your event or send afterwards. And of course, the language used by those who people are talking directly to your audience. So any speakers at your event or lawyers who are offering consultations or people staffing information stands. That's not to say if your event is targeted to young people, you need to start throwing words around like woke and lit. You can hear how ridiculous that sounds just coming out of my mouth, so please don't do that. But just make sure you're using language that your specific audience can easily understand. So if you look at a term like elder abuse, aged care workers might know what that means. So it would be absolutely appropriate to use it if you're running an event designed for them. But older people themselves might not understand it. So if they're your target audience, you should think about using some different terminology. It's also really easy to assume that the language you use every day is generally understood by people in the wider community. But we've learned through experience that even a term like family law is actually an industry term. And again, while that might be fine to use for some audiences, for others, words like divorce or relationship breakdown, or even split up with your partner might be much easier to understand. A helpful way to think about it is to ask, what words would my target audience type into Google if they were looking for information about this topic? You should also consider your target audience when you're deciding where your event will be held. It's much easier to engage your target audience if you go to where they are, rather than expecting them to come to you. My colleagues Matt and Helen will go into more detail about in-person versus online events in a moment. But for now, I just want to flag that For in-person events, we have found that the most effective events are those that are held at locations that are convenient for the target audience and that they are already using. Not only are those locations easier for your audience to get to, they're familiar and they're not intimidating. For example, libraries are very accessible for most people and are particularly good for engaging with groups who are already using that space. If you're wanting to run an event for older people and you know that there is a seniors group that meets at your local library each week, chat to the library and see if you can get hold of your event and see if you can hold your event during the meeting or immediately before or after it. It's also worth keeping in mind that many people are really intimidated by corporate offices. So they might be put off by an event held in a law firm's boardroom, for example. Again, it depends on who your target audience is. That may not be the case if you're targeting professionals, for example. For online events, consider whether your target audience is computer literate and whether they have a reliable internet connection or indeed even just access to the internet. Also think about the platforms that they're comfortable using. Last year, the Goulburn Valley Libraries ran a series of online events designed for their local community. They knew that their regular library users wanted to engage with were not very computer literate, but many had attended the library's Facebook training session, and so they were comfortable using Facebook. So they decided to live stream their events via their Facebook account rather than by using Zoom or another platform. You should also consider what date and time would suit your audience best. As I mentioned earlier, older people might prefer an event during the day, while after hours might be better for young parents or working professionals. If you're running events for school kids, you'll probably want to run them during school hours. It's also a good idea to choose an event format that will appeal to your target audience. Think about how they like to consume information. I know a lot of people were wanting some guidance about the best type of event to run, but it's really going to depend on who your particular audience is and the purpose of your event and what you're hoping to achieve. Please do get in touch with us if you'd like some help working out the most effective type of event to run. Finally, when setting your target audience, it is also important to consider if you have a way to reach that audience to let them know about your event. As I mentioned at the start, we will be running a session in April about how to effectively market your event. But that is something that is worthwhile turning your mind to at this early stage. For now, I just want to mention that you don't necessarily need to be explicit in your event description or advertising blurb about who your event is designed for, although it may be a good idea in some cases, for example, to set expectations about what you will be covering. Your marketing strategy and how you plan your event should be enough to attract your target audience. I'm now going to hand over to Matt and Helen to talk about some of the things you need to think about when deciding whether to run an online or an in-person event. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kate. I think for very obvious reasons, Victorian Law Week over the last couple of years has been largely held online. And this has worked very well for some organisations, particularly those with a statewide reach, but it isn't the right approach for everyone. And that's particularly so for local and community organisations with regular in-person audiences. So while we recognise that not all events are going to be suitable to be run online, for those considering it, we've found a number of benefits. First of all, you can reach more people. This is something we experienced over the last couple of years, and it's particularly if your topic is universal across the state. It's also very cost effective and logistically simple for both you and the attendees, particularly instead of having to run the logistics around an in-person event. Considering the current environment for COVID-19, it is still much more predictable. You can proceed with certainty. we don't have a crystal ball, but it seems to change each year, and we hope that everything runs smoothly. But with an online event, you're assured that you can go ahead. It's also very easy to collaborate. So if you want a guest speaker from overseas, no problem. For sensitive issues, online events can offer a level of privacy and anonymity in a way that can be trickier to handle in person. And the event can have lasting value beyond the day. So such as we're doing today, you can record it, publish it online, and share more broadly after the event. So while we see these benefits, there are a few considerations to keep in mind. So accessibility is very key here, because online events aren't necessarily accessible to everyone. And if your audience is not in a position to attend an online event, then it's not right for you. If you're new to the technology, you may need to spend some time choosing the right platforms and learning the tech. Now, most are quite intuitive, but it pays to practice, and it pays to understand whether your audience will know how to use it or know how to access it. And it's very important to have a clear idea of the purpose of your event and the experience of your attendees. You know, how will they interact with you? What would you like them to be able to see and do to get the most out of the experience? We've been running online events now for nearly 2 years and have learned many lessons about what works for us. So if you're considering running an online event, we would be happy to talk with you about our experiences and how that may work for you. I'm now going to quickly pass back to Kate to finish off today's session. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. That brings us to the end of the webinar. Thank you so much for all joining us today. I hope you're all considering participating in Victorian Law Week this year. Please don't hesitate to get in touch with us if you do have any questions or you'd like to discuss your event ideas. Our contact details are on the screen. No question is a silly question. We would really welcome conversations with you, and hopefully you've really got a sense today that our team is very warm and very friendly and keen to get to know you all. We have some resources on the Victorian Law Week website that cover some of the content we've discussed today, and more will be added in the lead up to Victorian Law Week, so please check them out. If you're ready to go with your event, we are accepting registrations via our website. Thanks again and have a great day.